Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sara Mokaram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders about their business, market trends, growth strategies, and what's ahead. On today's episode, we are joined by Hussain, founder and CEO of Revic AI. Thank you so much for joining me today, Hussain. I'm excited to have you on.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive in, I always like to just hear the story behind people's companies and your journey so far. So let's start with your story and the why behind the company. You've had quite the journey in tech. And before Revic, what moments or frustrations really drove you to start solving this particular pain in revenue operations?
It's a great question. Look, I think the best solutions come from people that experience the pain because you know it intimately. I was on the go-to-market side. I had almost every job in sales. Like I started on the SE side, sales specialist overlay type of jobs, sales leader, sales manager, revenue leader, those kinds of functions. And each point, like there's a tremendous amount of pain that you feel. And one of the core pieces of pain is like, where do we spend time? What's a good use of time in the revenue organization? What's a bad use of time? And then the second big piece is like, how do I learn from the team around me, right? Because as a seller, you're kind of a lone wolf for to an extent, and so but there's a team of lone wolves all learning and iterating at the same time. And so we started the company to kind of solve a couple of problems. One, where should organizations focus? When we say organization, we're thinking at the revenue leader all the way down to the sales rep. We should be able to answer that same question, like this is where you should focus. Is there good use of time, bad use of time? And then two, how do we tap into like the collective wisdom? Like how do we turn all this tribal knowledge into something that everybody can use to elevate their tactical execution? And so those are the kind of the two things. Those are always the things that I paid attention to when I was a rep, when I was a manager, when I was a revenue leader, like what's working and how can we do more of it? And so that's kind of those some of the problems we're trying to solve.
Perfect. And, I've seen the pitch where it states you're giving every seller a chief of staff. And so when you first started building, what was that aha moment where you felt this is that direction or this is the value prop that you want to sell?
It's a couple of things. One, when you talk to reps, you could sense a sheer amount of frustration at the volume of things that they have to do and the lack of what they feel like true empathy and assistance. And on the flip side, it was also true on the organization. The organizations were frustrated with sellers because they're like, we provide you so much assistance, you don't use it. And so what we notice is that there's like this gap between what the information that organizations provide to sellers and what the sellers can consume and make actionable. And so we said, hey, we can solve this problem. And so we started with this concept of like a chief of staff for every seller. But that's a pretty broad remit and a lot of things that a seller needs to do or wants to do. And so we said, hey, can we start with something really simple and focus on like, hey, can we figure out what accounts should you pay attention to? Why should you pay attention to? And so really, to kind of more specifically answer your question, we spent time like interviewing probably 300 salespeople, revenue leaders, RevOps leaders, marketing leaders. I had a lot of opinions coming into the founding of the company because of my personal experience and the frustrations that I experienced. But the last thing we want to do is just bias to my perspective. We wanted to have a broader perspective, and we just saw it pretty consistently. Like, hey, everybody's struggling with this disconnect between org and seller and getting sellers to adhere to what the org thinks, and then sellers feeding back. They're frustrated that the org is not reacting fast enough. And so we said, hey, there's an opportunity here to solve.
And can you share for anyone who's not super familiar with Revic AI, how does it work? And what are the benefits of it for, say, a user coming in and what can they expect from it?
Yeah, the first problem we set out to solve is where should you focus? And this actually has different interpretations depending on who you talk to. So if you talk to a marketing leader, it's ICP. If you talk to a sales leader, it's account targeting, or account prioritization. And if you talk to a sales rep, it's account research. Like within these accounts, my territory is pretty much defined. What should I say, and what information can you glean about the account? So those are the core problems. So CMO, it's ICP. Revenue leader, it's account targets and territory builds, and then the rep, it's research on the specific set accounts. The way the technology works is we basically connect into all the different revenue systems that companies have. There's this perception that the CRM carries everything. That's kind of true, but the CRM also carries a lot of garbage. So that's one big problem. So like absorbing and and cleansing that garbage so that it's meaningful and material so that we can come up with determinations. But there's also marketing has its own repository of information. Some of that makes it into the CRM, some of it doesn't. Some of it sits, will sit in the marketing automation platforms, the HubSpots and the Marketos and what have you. And then there's a bunch of tools in between. So there's the sales execution platforms, the outreaches, the sales lofts, and then the next generation of those technologies. And so our first step is like, can we build a view, an actual complete view on an account, and use that to make assessments on every single account. So learn about the entire revenue history, understand what worked, what didn't, why didn't it work, why did it work, deconstruct it, and then start to project that onto new sets of accounts. And that allows us to have like a pretty microscopic view or pretty like precise view on every single account that we can then later acclimate and combine that data to answer bigger questions like what's our IC, what segments should we target, why should we target them, and then help the seller actually execute on that.
So your guys' solution is able to tie into these different solutions that they might have already and then be able to give additional output or information, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we combine like their history with a bunch of data that we amass. So we track about 35 million companies, over 700 million technologies, 60, 70 million job postings that are happening. Those all give us like really good, interesting information about companies. And what we're trying to do is overlay a company's revenue history with our data to understand what is actually like, why are you winning these accounts so that we can understand which accounts you should target next and focus on.
That's great. That's amazing. So now that we understand a little bit about Revic AI, I want to zoom out a bit and look at this fast moving market. But AI in sales is a noisy space right now. So what do you think most people are getting wrong about how AI should support go-to-market teams?
I think there's a few areas to think about. Like there's easy. I hate to use like cheap AI, but like in some level, it's just a wrapper over ChatGPT, and it's somebody that's figured out how to do something faster, easier. That's temporary, and there's a lot of technologies and companies that show up and do this. And generally, those companies show up and they basically shoot out and they get a million, 10 million in ARR. And as quickly as they go up, they come back down because like it's not an actual innovation. So that's one side of it. So like, I think there's this kind of serious FOMO on the buyer side to try to like get AI into the mix. And so any one of these technologies get absorbed and adopted pretty quickly. So like there has to be an evaluation on what's underpinning this technology, like what's unique and what's proprietary about this technology. If you're just wrapping OpenAI, then it's probably going to be short-lived. The second thing is, the kind of classic way to people are thinking about AI is taking exact existing workflows and just using AI for extreme automation. I think it's like that is good. It gives you kind of an efficiency save, but it doesn't fundamentally change the quality of interactions and engagements sales reps or organizations have with their customers. I think there's an opportunity to rethink how we think about go to market and how we can truly deliver what we like to call internally like a unified like customer experience. Like how can we understand everything that's ever happened with this account so that we can actually have like very curated, very specialized interactions and engagement. So, hopefully that answers your question, but like, that's what we think about like all the time is like, how do we completely fundamentally change go to market and how organizations are structured to support go to market?
Mhm. And how do you think buying behavior has changed in the past, I don't know, 12, 18 months? And what do you think RevOps leaders most urgently need that they're not getting today?
I think the tolerance level keeps reducing from the buyer side. There's just not a lot of patience to go through kind of a structured process. You see like Jason Lumpkins rails on this every single time he posts, like, don't make me go through an SDR to get to a sales rep that's going to force me to go through a pitch. I already know what I want. I want to just have a conversation around those particular things. And that's really problematic for organizations because you want consistency in how you engage with customers. One, for quality control issues, and two, for your own reporting mechanisms. But if customers are saying, no, I'm a snowflake, treat me like a snowflake, that creates a lot of problems for organizations. So I think that creates a really big RevOps challenge, which is like, how do you do this any to any kind of equation? And two, how do you kind of introduce this new world when you already have investments in the existing world? And that's also really hard. So I think those are the kind of the two things like I would be thinking about. In fact, we're thinking about like we're building our go-to-market engine right now, and we're thinking, do we go through the classic organizational structure of, SDRs plus AEs and what have you, or is there some other paradigm that we should be thinking about? And we're tilting to the other paradigms.
Interesting. And who do you most often get compared to or think you compare to?
I think there's a lot of confusion in this space. There's everybody uses the same terms like, hey, we can help you create pipeline or we help you close pipeline. And so like if you stay at that level of abstraction, it's like a million different companies. But I think we've honed in on our initial use cases, ICP identification. And a lot of that tends to be really manual effort. It's a lot of deep research that the RevOps team has to do. And they do all this homework, they do all this work. They get like 1.5 weeks between operating plan and territory builds to go do all this work. And then they come back and then marketing or sales or product says, I don't like these answers. We're going to change it this way. And so it's really like we're basically taking a really manual process, really archaic process and really and a process that should be very objective but turns into be a really subjective exercise, and kind of just automating that whole thing and allowing people to do it continuously. Like you should know your ICP changes, new tariffs come in, ICP will change tomorrow. Like great, okay, we should be able to understand and adapt to market conditions in near real time, and ICP is one of those things that should be affected by that.
And so now switching a little bit to growth and marketing strategies. I know that you've closed a seed round and you've got some well-known customers on board. So I also saw that you mentioned that 88%, I believe, of closed deals came from Revic prioritized accounts, which is huge. So what specific actions or channels have been most effective in getting that kind of traction?
I think for us as like where we are as a company, we're early, so we need to have a lot of trust between us and our customers, and so we find comfortable and warm ways to like interact and engage with customers. We do layer on cold outbound as a mechanism, but kind of with this promise of like, hey, we're going to build together, as opposed to like presenting ourselves as this like perfect product. We're not. It's something we're always aspiring to, and in this kind of world where every 2 weeks some major announcement comes out that fundamentally changes how we think about AI usage. We need our buyers to understand that, but we do spend a lot of time with as much around our network. So whether it's relationships we have inside of our organization with others, people that we meet and learn from and adapt, like you, and then find others that they're like, hey, these are the right people to talk to, and we can just have a warm and comfortable and safe conversation around what we can and can't do. And then we tap into our investors, and now we've been lucky enough that as people have moved from one organization to another, they brought us around along with them. So maybe just a kind of a bigger thing, our strategy is really how do we make sure that every one of our customers is really happy and getting a lot of value, and then things just kind of work out after that.
And if I asked your head of marketing what Revic AI is betting big on this year, what would they say?
They'll probably say AI, but I feel like everybody has to say that. And you mean like on a strategy perspective?
Yep.
It's really extending that like umbrella of trust, right? So we use kind of my social presence, or we're trying to amplify my social presence, because like at this stage, the founder's story and engagement with the founder is really important. And so we use that quite a bit. So that's what our head of marketing would talk about, Colin would talk about. And then just establishing deep thought around the future of go to market, because today it's really easy to create content. It's really easy to create cheap content. Deep, thoughtful content is still it takes a lot more effort, and people are kind of shying away from those. And we think that that's a really interesting place for us to play.
And so, of course, every company hits bottlenecks or hits challenges, right? So, what's been harder than you expected in getting go to market teams to change their behavior, even when the data shows the old way isn't working?
When we first started and we started to tell people these are the accounts that you need to focus on, and these are the accounts you're going to lose, nobody believed us. That the customer, the 88% of wins coming from Revic identified accounts, that customer, it took us 6 months to convince them. But two things happened. One, the field started to recognize automatically that we were right a lot. So like we basically had this kind of what we would consider silent mode, where we were providing the output but not actively training and enabling the field. But you started to see subset of the field start to like pay attention to our score automatically. So that was interesting. And two, people are starting to feel more comfortable with AI. So like, as more and more people use ChatGPT and trust it to do more bigger thinking, then there's more comfort around AI. So like being right was most people just didn't believe us, candidly. Like, and again, we just had to show evidence over and over. Like we had one customer where like, hey, the last 46 losses in a row, we would have told you to not even pursue these accounts. And those are like eureka moments. Like they're like, wait, what? I don't can you prove it? Can you show it? And then it's like three or four different iterations, and we're just constantly having to have that conversation. And I would do the same thing because like what we're asking them to do is, hey, suspend what you believe, trust this company that just started 2 years ago, and some voodoo math magic that's underneath it. Like, yeah, I get their perception, but we take a view of like we need to provide you evidence. We need the onus of trust is on us, not on you. Don't trust us at the outset. We will prove and we will earn your trust. And once we earn your trust, we'll see what's happening with our customers is that all their territory builds are happening off of our predictions, all the SDR motions, all the marketing investments, all the sales rep territories, all that stuff starts to align to what we're suggesting for the organization. On our side, we also take that trust really seriously. So we monitor for any time we make a mistake. And we are very vigilant at understanding, hey, well, this account was closed won. We didn't think it was winnable. What happened? And so that we try to stay honest about like where we're good, what we're not, and then we're always iterating and improving.
So are you finding, I know you mentioned that kind of silent mode, right? Where you can have that running at the same time so that you can then help prove that your system works. So is that a way that you guys are, or a strategy that you're using to obtain new clients, is offering this way of let me prove to you by using this kind of in the background?
100%. Like all of our initial engagements and the way we operate with customers is because we're asking for a big leap of faith in terms of trust. We start by saying, hey, let's prove it to you first. And so we start with a kind of a low touch pilot. So 10 to 15 minutes on their side max, and then our systems connect and we start to show some output, and then we prove it over time, and then generally they're like, oh wow, this is more compelling than we thought.
Gotcha. And is there a part of the product or experience you feel isn't quite where you want it to be yet?
If you're part of the engineering conversations we have or the product conversations, it's every part. But we've opted to emphasize the quality of AI predictions and that side of the equation, like the substance. And now the point of emphasis for us is like, how do you refine the user experience so that it's more impactful and consumable by the different people that consume our products or use our product. So that's like the next facet of work that we're doing now. But we focus on the engines, the transmission, all the core stuff that like you don't really see, but you kind of feel, and then just the aesthetics become the second piece.
And if you had to pick one internal metric or signal that says that we're not there yet, what would that be and why?
We pay attention to how many of the accounts that we thought are were winnable are actually winnable. That's our North Star. Like if organizations are betting on us and sales reps are betting on us and trusting us, like as the feedback that we're giving them on where to go focus, where to spend time, is that resulting in a change in how revenue gets created? And if the answer is yes, then we're on track.
And when you think about the biggest roadblock to consistent revenue growth for Revic AI right now, what's the one thing you wish, some outsource or outside force or somebody could just take off your plate or solve better than what you're using today?
Are you talking about tech centric or like just pretty
They're
broad?
pretty broad.
Yeah. I think there's some work on the analyst side to like help buyers understand the different grades of AI technology that exists, because there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And so like if we could have somebody like, hey, start to like clarify it for buyers so that they can understand who are the pretenders, who are the people doing the deep level investments, that's ideal. Because like every technology at this point. Like we registered Revic AI like 4 years ago. Like this is our bet, like that we were making, or 3 years ago, whatever the timeline was. Like, we knew that this is where the market was early on, and we knew that the investment to do this is like you have to build a sound foundation so you can take advantage of all the innovations on the AI side. Not that we knew the level of pace of innovation and what's like this has been beyond our wildest dreams, but we set up a structure to like be able to absorb and consume a lot of this stuff. But others are now having to make that investment, and that stuff is hard to decipher if you're a buyer. But analysts can dig in quite a bit deeper on the technologies to understand what's real and what's vaporware.
So now looking ahead 12 months from now, what do you want Revic AI to be known for by customers, investors, and the market?
It's the thing that makes it easy for reps to engage with customers. We want the chief of staff concept will become more front and center as something we talk about because we believe in this world that sellers shouldn't be spending time in our tool. They should be spending time in talking to customers, and everything that's not that should be something that we can absorb from Revic's perspective and make easy for them. And so that's how we think about the world. So we do generally think like every seller deserves a chief of staff that when they're done with a meeting, we absorb the information from the conversational intelligence tool. We figure out the follow-ups. We figure out who inside the organization needs to assist. What's been done in the past to respond to those kinds of follow-ups. Figure out what's the right answer for this specific customer, and then provide those kinds of information back to the seller, so that they're not sitting there chasing people thinking about these things that have already been solved 100 times or 1,000 times inside of an organization. So we really think that the power of AI is to unlock the seller's true productivity. And the way you do that is put them in front of more customers armed with better information, more precise information.
So if we fast forward to the end of this year and you didn't hit your goals, what would you say got in the way?
I think there's a lot of technology that we'd have to figure out how to build in an area that's very nascent and continuously evolving. So like every week or two, there's some significant announcement. Like 2 days ago, OpenAI announced a new model. A month ago, Google had announced agent to agent. 2 months before, 3 months before, Anthropic had come up with MCP. Like these are all technologies that are just like showing up, and it's unclear what's going to be durable and what's not going to be durable because there's such a land grab. There's such a fight happening at the foundation model side, at the hyperscalers side of the equation, and it's unclear who's going to win out in all these different areas. And so we're making bets that trying to predict who's going to win out in each of these different categories, what's going to be stable, what's not going to be stable. And so that can if we make something wrong, that sets us back a month or 2 months. And so that's not ideal, but like in order to be on the cutting edge, we have to make some of those bets.
Sure. And so I always like to end the podcast with an advice question. So, what advice would you give to other founders building in crowded or fast changing markets right now?
Stay true to the problem. Like the more you focus on the customer and the problem that they're experiencing, like these other things, and I get caught in this loop all the time, which is like, what about this? What about that? What about this? And like, once we go back and ground back to the customer and like, because their world is very different. It's not changing, and they're not like in this like, dome of whatever the right way to like this, just like nebula, like this world that's like everything changes all the time. And it's just like shape shifting and all that stuff. They're in this world where like, how do I create revenue? How do I create revenue efficiently? How do I prevent churn? Like they're asking very like rudimentary core existential questions about their business. And if we stay focused on that, then these things become just enablers and tools. And so then we don't get too emotionally invested in any one particular thing. It's really, we should be invested in what the customers need and the pain that we're trying to solve. That's really hard. Because like investors will talk to us like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Our peers are talking about it. And so like, that FOMO kicks in quite a bit. And so we just have to remember to like, hey, let's stay grounded on the North Star here.
And since Revic AI seems like such a great solution for sales teams, for those who do want to learn more or connect with you, where's the best place to find you or more information about Revic?
Yeah, so every single social media outlet I exist on, but each at revic.ai is the easiest one. So Revic, REVIC.ai is the easiest one. You can also, if you hit the contact us on our website, I'll see it. So I pay attention to all those details. So it's a great way to connect with us.
Well, thank you, Hussain, for joining us today. I've enjoyed learning about Revic AI, and thank you everyone for tuning in to Mo's Market Pulse. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, and join us again to hear more insights from leaders coming up on future episodes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.